Imagine standing in a typical supermarket aisle. You are surrounded by tens of thousands of individual products, each screaming for your attention. In an environment this dense, most buyers make their choices in a fraction of a second. When a consumer is moving down the aisle this quickly, they are not stopping to read the paragraphs of text carefully printed on your packaging. How does a brand guarantee it gets noticed when the brain is actively filtering out words? The biological workaround relies on distinctive assets. These are sensory brand proxies, specific colors, distinct shapes, recognizable characters, or even short sounds. They bypass the reading centers of the brain entirely, acting as automatic, deeply ingrained mental triggers. Take a widely known character asset like Ronald McDonald. A buyer doesn't need to see the name printed anywhere on the building to know exactly what company is being promoted. The character operates as a direct, instant substitute for the corporate name. Yet, companies frequently sabotage these exact mental triggers. Marketing teams will lean heavily on written copy to explain their value, or they will constantly redesign their packaging because they grow bored with the look. This forces the buyer to completely relearn how to spot the brand on the shelf. If you do not have an objective mathematical method to evaluate the strength of your visual proxies, your brand will inevitably fade into that background clutter, missing out on crucial sales. Evaluating an asset requires measuring two specific metrics. The first is fame, the percentage of buyers who link the visual or sound to your brand. The second is uniqueness, the measure of whether that asset evokes only your brand, or if it accidentally reminds people of your competitors. When these two metrics are plotted on a graph, they form a diagnostic tool. Every single piece of collateral your brand uses can be mapped into one of four strategic quadrants. The top right is the use or lose quadrant. These are your most valuable assets, scoring highly in both fame and uniqueness. But human memory decays over time. If you stop placing these assets prominently in front of buyers, those hard-earned neurological links will degrade. The bottom right represents investment potential. These are hidden gems. They have high uniqueness, meaning your brand firmly owns them, but low fame. Very few people know about them yet, requiring you to invest heavily in media reach to build their profile. The top left is a trap called avoid solo use. These assets are famous but generic. Without uniqueness, using them solo will likely trigger thoughts of a competitor's brand. To use them safely, they must be printed directly next to your brand name. Finally, the bottom left is the ignore or test quadrant. These are assets with low fame and low uniqueness. They are dead weight, taking up valuable space, and they should be abandoned immediately. Mapping elements this way removes subjective design opinions from the boardroom. It turns visual identity into a mathematically verifiable business strategy. Securing one high-performing asset is a good start, but statistically insufficient to cover an entire market. A strong brand constructs a complete distinctive asset palette. This palette requires neurological diversity. You need a specific color block to dominate the physical space of a large billboard. You need a distinct shape or logo to stand out in the text-heavy environment of a smartphone screen. And you need a distinct audio signature for those critical moments when the buyer's eyes are completely off the screen. Building a multi-sensory toolkit ensures the brand triggers recognition, whether the consumer is navigating a chaotic physical store or scrolling through a fragmented digital feed. A pervasive assumption in marketing is the meaning myth, the idea that brand assets must carry deep, symbolic meaning about a company's inner purpose or its current product catalog. Tying an asset too closely to what you currently sell becomes a severe liability. If your logo visually represents a specific piece of desktop computing hardware, you will have a serious problem when the company inevitably evolves to sell phones, watches, or streaming services decades later. But the empirical reality is much simpler. To maximize long-term growth, the strongest and most important meaning of any visual or auditory asset should be nothing more than the brand name itself. To build that direct connection, you have to follow an absolute rule of execution: prominent co-presentation. A new asset must be repeatedly shown side by side with the explicit brand name. This is the only way that a buyer's brain can physically forge the neurological link between the two. Once that link is established, it requires ruthless consistency. Changing an established asset just because an internal team grew tired of looking at it destroys the exact memory structures built during that co-presentation phase. A rigorously audited, diverse, and consistently executed palette of distinctive assets acts as the ultimate structural bridge. It takes mental availability, the buyer's ability to think of you, and converts it directly into physical availability, ensuring they can easily find and buy you in the real world.